Good morning, and thank you so much for that introduction, as well as thank you for your interest in learning more about the mitigation and the relocation of the Newtok tribe in the state of Alaska. The state of Alaska not only is one of the most exciting mitigation teams that there is, but they are doing things that in the lower 48 we don't even comprehend and that we don't even have to consider. For example, the work that they are doing, they're having to deal with logistics, with weather, and with costs that we don't consider whether we're looking at Florida and Hawaii and South Carolina. So we're really excited to be able to talk to members of our state team there, as well as with the SHMO there in Alaska. So let me start by introducing myself. I'm Mark Boone, and I'm with Tidal Basin Company. And along with me, I've got Barry Makioka, and Barry is also with Tidal Basin. He is the mitigation specialist that is working alongside the team there in Alaska. Finally, we have Garrett Brooks from the state of Alaska. He's the SHMO there. And Garrett also brings his expertise in mitigation as well as dealing on a state level with emergency management. So, with that said, Garrett, I want to start by asking you some questions and kind of just bring the audience up to speed. When we're talking about the Newtok tribe and this project, we're going to be covering a lot of different topics, and I'm really interested to hear not only how what you've experienced is different, but how you were successful in relocating an entire tribe out of harm's way. If you can give us just a little bit of history of Newtok, the tribe, and tell us a little bit about what they were seeing on the ground.
Thank you, Mark, for the introduction. So, when you start talking about rural Alaska, especially the western part of the state where Newtok is located, you have a large range of hazards or issues that these communities face, from sea storms to river erosion. But Newtok itself has, it's relocated once before when they built the school at the current Newtok site, and they're primarily a subsistence community, and due to the changes in the rivers, the permafrost, the sea storm occurrences, they are looking at relocating again, a wholesale relocation of the community to their new site 9 miles up the river to Muttervik.
Yeah. So we're looking at, when we say they're sustenance hunters, basically they're frozen. Their ground is frozen. What percent of the year?
Probably say 70-75% of the time. Basically, their winter starts somewhere around late September, early October, and goes until what we call breakup season, which is when all the ice flushes out off the rivers into the ocean. And that's normally late April, early May. So from about October to May, it's pretty much frozen in those areas.
Okay. So lay of the land, they're living in single family houses. Your office is there in Anchorage. How do you get? I mean, can you just drive over there? I mean, how do you get to Newtok from your office?
So most to explain that question in particular, Mark, you have to understand how the state transportation is laid out. The state of Alaska doesn't have a lot of roads. Most of our roads run north to south, and there's a couple that run east towards Canada. Anything west of Fairbanks or Anchorage, the only way you're getting to it is by plane or by boat. So you can't drive there. There's no Home Depots. There's no nothing out there. So if you are going there, you're going there either by plane or by boat.
All right. So we're talking to people that are familiar with mitigation with floodplain. I want to ask you, what percent of the state of Alaska is actually mapped in the rate maps?
So I would probably tell you about 90 to 95% of the state is not floodplain mapped.
So when you're looking at doing mitigation, you don't have the benefit of floodplain maps. In other words,
That's correct. We try to use the best available data, whether that's high water marks or historical knowledge from elders in the communities to determine where the historical flooding's been.
okay. Now here's let's get back to Newtok itself. It is a community built near a river because they are sustenance hunters, meaning they hunt those few months that it's not frozen. They hunt those months in order to have food year round. Food, provisions, heat, all of those things has to take place during those summer months. If I wanted to come visit the folks in Newtok, and they're out hunting, I'm going to be there all by myself. Correct? They're just going to be they're going to be doing their hunting in order to provide for their families for the winter months.
Correct. There's hunting that goes on pretty much, I think, mostly year round. The berry picking, the egg picking, things of that nature all happen in the spring and summer. But you've got moose, caribou, things like that happen in the fall. You've got seal hunting that happens in the spring. Matter of fact, we had an incident where we planned for several months to go out to Newtok to visit them. And when we got out there, it was, I think, late April. And it was a very sunny day, one of the first sunny days, good, warm, sunny days they've had. And they're like, oh, the seals are in. We're not going to be here. Bye. And left us to go seal hunting because that's what they had to do. Yeah. So ultimately, that meeting didn't happen because they were all out seal hunting for 4 or 5 days.
Yeah. And who can blame them? I mean, it's a different way of life than what we're used to in the lower 48. And that's been a kind of a theme that you've drilled into us, which has been, you can't look at the mitigation needs with always with a lower 48 mindset, because some of the ways that we're used to doing can't be done or can't logistically be done because of the obstacles. So you've got the tribe of Newtok. They're having severe erosion. That's just the number one thing. To share with our audience, the main causes of erosion are the ice melt with the river and the force of the water that's coming from the ice melt. You have issues with permafrost, which is usually something that's right as rain. You can always build upon it, but permafrost degradation. And then you also have man-made causes, but you've got some severe erosion. And at one point, you were losing over 70 feet. Is that correct? 70 feet of land a year?
Yeah, it's somewhere around that. I know one spring storm, I believe it was last year, they lost 30 feet in one storm.
In one storm. Okay.
That's correct.
So if folks are looking at their screen, you can see the shoreline that started back in 1996, as well as the projection of 2027. And there's some small buildings there. What those buildings include a school.
Correct. The school in that photo you have up there about the 2022 line with the blue roof is the school.
Okay, and that's also the town shelter.
Correct. A lot of these villages use the schools as their emergency shelter when there are storms or they need a place to evacuate to.
Okay. So before we move forward in slide, I just want to remind our audience of the process that we go through in the lower 48 when we're dealing with severe erosion, where we're dealing with mitigation. We typically we look at, okay, well, what's available for funding, and we talk about the hazard mitigation assistance programs that whether it's the grants or the other programs that they have. When we're dealing with in the lower 48, an HMGP application process could take a year. And then once the program starts in earnest, it's a 12 to 18 month process depending on what you're doing, maybe longer for larger projects. And that time estimate's based upon construction year round. But Garrett, you would say you can't do construction or demolition or any of that year round, correct?
Correct. So Alaska is unique in the respect that because we don't have very many roads, especially going out west, we don't have any roads going out west from the major hubs. You run into transporting material and equipment via barge, either up rivers or across the Bristol Bay, things of that nature from Anchorage. So you're looking at barges normally start leaving around end of May, early June, depending on when the rivers clear out ice. I've seen them leave as late as mid-June. And then most construction companies want to demob all their equipment for the winter somewhere around late September, no later than the first week of October. So we have a very small construction window to get things done, 3 months roughly to get stuff done between getting barged out and getting barged back in.
Okay. What's been going on Newtok has been going on for quite some time, and we'll kind of talk about that. But they've been aware of the problem, but now we've got there's an urgent need, and so what we decided to do was we decided to look at what all is causing the threat, and then we decided to look at what do we need to do next. So we mentioned the permafrost melting. We also mentioned the storms. What folks are seeing on their screen right now, there's an image of the shore taking chunks and chunks away. And this is encroaching upon houses, upon the school. It encroached upon the airport. The FAA, they decommissioned the airport. Is that correct?
My understanding is correct. So if you actually look up the airport code for Newtok, it'll show it over at Mutrevik.
So they've already show it being moved.
Correct. The runway itself is still open because the state, the DOT maintains it, but really it's not used for much other than what we call bypass mail, which is basically the village's version of a mailman. They fly all the mail into the community, and for medevacs out. But now that everybody's over at Mutrevik, I don't see them using that runway at all anymore.
Yeah.
But I want to add something to that photo that you have up there, Mark. That was a more recent photo. At this point, the school had already been deemed condemned. And those connexes that you see in front of it, that was the spring storm I was referring to. There was 20 feet, 30 feet of land in front of those connexes before that storm came through. So when the storm came through, it took all that land and they scrambled to have to move all those connexes before they fell in the river.
When you say there are no roads in that area, what we're looking at there is a boardwalk, and that basically is a road between the various homes and the various structures in the town. Correct?
Correct. Most communities out west have boardwalks similar to that, whether they're laying on top of the permafrost or they're actually elevated. But the boardwalks are the community roads. They run their four-wheelers up and down them. They walk up and down them. That's their main way of getting around town is on the boardwalks.
Okay. All right. So obviously they're dealing with a loss of transportation. They're dealing with loss of vital services, and that's the scary thing for a lot of folks, because when a community loses those resources, it can put folks into danger. We're showing a statistic where we had over almost 210 residents were at one time living there, and I mentioned earlier up to 70 feet of land was lost on an annual basis. Thinking of all the different ways that we have to urgently address issues, the state has tried pretty much every avenue they could, correct?
Correct. So just so people understand, when we start talking about Newtok in particular, but any community in the western part of the state that has similar issues, and they want to start figuring out how they can mitigate things. When you start talking about either relocation, there's three options a community has. They can relocate, a wholesale relocation of the community, which is what Newtok decided to do. There's a managed retreat, which basically is moving people away from the erosion in a very methodical way, not necessarily relocating from the actual site itself, but just moving back. Or there's a harden in place. Newtok chose to do a wholesale relocation because they knew that there was an issue going back several decades. And so the state, FEMA, BIA, several other federal and state agencies had been working with the community for roughly 20 years to get them moved to their new site over in Metro Bay.
Garrett, we're looking at the storm that you were mentioning earlier, and this shows the almost like a before and after with the flooding that had happened there. How devastating was this storm?
It was Murbach was that was 2005. Anytime you get a major storm, especially with Newtok, and you get the inundation not only from the river, the dynamics of the river, but the inflow coming off the ocean, off the bay, you get major flooding within the community. And both this storm and in the Typhoon Murbach in 22, they had severe effects to the community as far as flood inundation, more erosion of the shorelines and things to that nature.
So, Barry, the tribe was actually able to issue an emergency proclamation, and that was that they would need to be out of there by a specific amount of time. With that emergency proclamation, though, action had to take place, and we had a very short window of time to get these folks out of where they are and into new homes. What is that like in Alaska?
The problem that we were going to face is that we had no real ability without that emergency order to bypass procurement and start building transitional homes in the time that we had available. Typhoon Murbach changed the ability of the tribe to remain there after September. So we had 3 months in which we could build transitional homes, have them transported and erected on site so that people would be out of the dangerous parts of Newtok by the September storm season. And it's a good thing we did, because in fact there were severe storms that following fall and winter.
Okay, so I'm imagining a photo of a map of Alaska, but you're talking about you have Anchorage is where these homes were being built. The barge is going to have to go all the way down the Aleutian Islands and then back through and back up the Aleutian Islands. Is that how this works?
There's a route that they follow from the loading point in Port Mackenzie, which is actually in the Matsu borough, on the west coast. Yes, they had to go through the Aleutian chain and up the Bering to get to the Matravik site. It was, I think, a 1,300-mile journey. I don't know. I'd have to consult with the captain of the Minnow to make sure. A 3-hour trip.
All right, let me go to Garrett on that point. Garrett, this kind of logistic, we're not thinking of this when we're doing buyout programs and acquisition demolition for HMGP. We don't take this into consideration. What is the cost of just transporting these homes?
Just the barge itself to charter, because it was not a scheduled barge. We had to charter a barge to do this. It was about $1 million.
So we're adding $1 million onto the cost of the homes on top of the cost of purchasing the old property, as well as the cost to restore the property once demolition takes place. I'm curious, Garrett, you had a bunch of funding resources. Who really stepped to the plate to make this happen?
So there was the big partner in this to make this happen ended up being BIA, Bureau of Indian Affairs. They had awarded Newtok a large chunk of money to do stuff related to the relocation of people from Newtok to Matravik. So the tribe got with BIA and did a contract to have these transitional homes built and shipped out to Matravik for the people to be able to move to them from Newtok. Now the state played a role in it. We helped with procurement and getting all the contractors together, and then BIA is the one that actually paid for it. So it was a joint venture between the state and BIA.
Okay, so it wasn't a matter of just loading a pickup truck. We're talking about a lot of different hands that were involved, a lot of collaboration that had to take place. Barry had mentioned that there was a storm along the way. They had to. There was no dock in place for the offloading of these homes, and they had to actually haul. In addition to the homes, they had to haul trucks and a skid steer and different logistical pieces of equipment in order to make the homes available. So Garrett, we keep talking about how things are different. We have these families that are in traditional or tiny homes. These homes can be added on to, they can be built out. A lot of families, we had 13 homes and then 5 duplexes that were on this boat. Talk us through like the landing process and what it was like, and we'll be looking at slides of that as you're speaking.
So the landing process out at Newtok, if I remember correctly, and Barry can correct me if I'm wrong, is they had to build an actual landing spot for them to offload the barge, and then they had to get all their equipment off and then have a staging area built as well to stage all the homes as they moved them one by one to their sites in Matravik.
So we're looking at photos of them leaving Anchorage at this point, and as we continue to click through those, we'll kind of see there we are with they had just left the port, and then if we keep clicking through here, we're going to see where they've arrived and they're being hauled up to the location. Where they're being hauled is the ground there is not subject to permafrost, and where they've been relocated to is on rock, correct?
Correct. Nelson Island, where they relocated to, is basically a giant rock.
So Garrett, there's a lot of work that remains, and Barry, you're aware that it took a lot of different hands, a lot of different sources of funding, but there's still work that needs to be done because it is an acquisition project. What remains, Barry, of the HMGP process?
So the families are out. And we're fortunate that nobody was hurt and everybody is safe. So they're ready to have those properties acquired. And we're at this point preparing for that to happen. We're testing the properties for contaminants as required by the NESHAP regulations for asbestos, for lead-based paints, for any hazardous materials that are left behind, like motor oil, batteries, tires, anything that may be left and not something that we should leave in place. Then there's also the larger part of the community that we're not acquiring that's also having to be cleaned up. The old fuel farm, the old school, the old clinic that has been damaged, the grocery, those things all have to be worked out so that we achieve an economy of scale in the acquisition and demolition. So there's no reason to rush the acquisition right now because of FEMA's requirement to demolish the home 90 days after its acquisition. People are safe. We're okay. We're getting it tested. We're getting it cleaned up. We're going to try to work it so that we get the most opportunity, given the limited amount of time that's available for doing this work, to clean up everything at one time. We anticipate using some of the material as recycling. Some of it will be loaded on barges. It's an expensive way to get rid of debris because we're going to have to carry it down to a C&D landfill, but that's what's required, so we'll do it. And we'll also give people some additional assistance in getting from their traditional transitional house into the full-size replacement house, which is where they want to get to, because they're giving up a house. And that money that we're paying them, they're going to reinvest that along with our comparable housing assistance to build the new structure that will become their permanent residence.
Garrett, a lot of the people attending this conference, they may not be looking at doing such a large project, nothing quite as austere, but I want to find out from you, what are some of the things that you've learned along the way that you would like to share about mitigation on this level scale?
So the biggest lesson for me, having started as the HMGP program manager when I first started with the division and then becoming the SHMO, with this project in particular, because they were wanting to do a wholesale relocation, and part of them had already relocated to the new site in Mutrovic, they ran into issues of paying for double infrastructure. So they were paying for fuel and power at Mutrovic as well as fuel and power at Newtok. So everybody living in both sites had, power. Same thing with food, same thing with gas to heat homes. So it became a financial burden on the community with that. So what I caution people when they look at wholesale relocations is they have to understand that as they're doing this, they're going to have to be building new infrastructure at the new site while still maintaining the old site, which now you're paying for double the infrastructure. And that is, for a lot of these communities and tribes, a heavy burden to shoulder.
All right. So we're going to put on the screen our website address and email. And if anybody has questions, they can reach out to us at that contact information. We want to thank Garrett and the state of Alaska for their time. And we want to thank the ASFPM for allowing us to tell this awesome story. Barry, thank you for all you did for the state, and keep up the good work.